I recently discussed on my other channel why certain video series had been left behind by me. And I sat at work yesterday and I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring them back. Slowly but surely. Starting with this. I have my own Hall of Fame. It's a small Hall of Fame. Whoops. It's a Hall of Fame that just dropped a magnet. Poor magnet. One day left her retirement. Tiger Williams, Pat Verbeek, Isa Tikkanen, and Yuri Lettinen are in it. And now Chris Osgood. Chris Osgood goes into my Hall of Fame because I don't think he'll ever make the NHL Hall of Fame. And it's too bad. The only sin committed by Chris Osgood was playing for a very good Detroit Red Wings team. He played briefly for the Islanders and St. Louis, by which I mean he was their starter. He became a lightning rod in New York and in St. Louis, ended up back in Detroit. All he did was win 401 games, which rates him 10th on the all-time wins list. He has 50 shutouts. Started his career in 93-94 and it ran until 2010-2011. He's the last goalie to ever wear a cage. So he's a trivia answer based on that. And he was a very good goaltender. Won 3 Stanley Cups, 97, 98, and 2008. And he was a major part of that 2008 Stanley Cup win. He really was. And he doesn't get the credit for it. Every time he turned around, Detroit was looking for somebody to replace him. And he's a poor man's version of what Tim Thomas was in Boston. Every time Tim Thomas would get, say, more than 25 or 30 starts, you'd read, the Bruins are looking for an upgrade in net over Thomas. And it was ridiculous. His numbers in Detroit were never fantastic, but neither were Grant Fuhr's in Edmonton, so let's not get into that. He was on the second All-Star team in 95-96, meaning at the end of the year, he was considered the second best goaltender in the NHL. By vote, he was considered the second best goalie. He was in the All-Star games in 1996 and 2008. And again, because he played on the high-octane, high-scoring, made of Hall of Famers Detroit Red Wings teams, he's sort of a forgotten guy. He was viewed as being along for the ride. 2 Jennings trophies. One shared with Mike Vernon, one shared with Dominic Hasek. And he has 74 playoff wins, which is 8th on the all-time list, I believe. Is it 8th or is it 4th? He's 8th in all-time playoff wins. He's 4th in all-time playoff shutouts with 15. You don't win in the playoffs without a good goaltender. Bad goaltenders don't win in the playoffs. It doesn't happen. And before anybody mentions Antti Niemi, I'm sorry. The year that Chicago won the Stanley Cup with him as the starter, Niemi was a very capable starting goaltender. He didn't cost them games, which is kind of what Chris Osgood was tasked with doing. Don't cost us games. And he didn't. And for that reason, in my eyes, he belongs in my Hall of Fame. He'll never make it to the NHL Hall of Fame. For the reasons I've indicated. He's along for the ride. He never won a Vezina. Blah, 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 blah. Jim Carrey won a Vezina. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame? No. Is a Vezina trophy necessarily an indicator of who the best goalie is? No. Could you argue that goaltenders have won in the last 5 years? They won a Vezina trophy and weren't necessarily the best goaltender in the league that season. Absolutely. You could make that argument. Chris Osgood was a victim of his own success. He was a valid, solid starting goaltender. And he went out on his own terms, and now he's a very good broadcaster, and he'll likely never make the NHL Hall of Fame. And if he does, it'll probably be decades from now. When people look and they realize, hey, this guy has all kinds of wins and shutouts, and he won 3 Stanley Cups, why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? And people will forget the whole stigma attached to him that he was simply good because of the team he was on. It's a ridiculous argument. And I always use the same name. Somebody people might have expected to be in the Hockey Guy Hall of Fame before Chris Osgood. I always use Ron Tugnutt as the example. Very good goaltender, always played on terrible teams. So his win-loss record was awful. But very, very good goaltender. And Osgood, you had a very good goaltender who played on excellent teams. But his stats in St. Louis and with the Islanders were not awful. He just wasn't what they decided they needed. And when you look at it, it's a career bookmarked by success. And in the NHL, there aren't very many goaltenders that get to those 400 wins. Even now, with shootouts and overtime wins being in abundance, you're not going to see very many goaltenders reach 400 wins. It's just not going to happen. So, Chris Osgood, 10th spot. He'll lose that spot in the next few years in all likelihood. But for right now, he's 10th. And for me, personally, he qualifies for my Hall of Fame. That's really all I got. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm sure people are going to tell me why he doesn't belong in any Hall of Fame. But to me personally, he does. He absolutely does. So, Chris Osgood, Hockey Guy Hall of Fame, the first inductee of 2018. This Hall of Fame is designed to honor players who likely don't make the actual NHL Hall of Fame, but in my eyes deserve some level of fame. So now, Chris Osgood will join Tiger Williams, Pat Verbeek, Esa Tikkanen, and Jiri Lehtinen. And watch for more inductions over the coming weeks. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And hey, thank you so much for being out there. It makes it worth being in here. I'll talk to you again soon.